How do we determine how much to Roth convert? This is a question we get all the time. And now, most people suggest that if I've been a diligent saver, I probably should be doing a Roth conversion. And we would mostly agree with that. Not everyone should, but in most cases, it's probably going to make sense, especially if you've saved $1 million or more, especially in tax-deferred vehicles. Now, the next question then is, how much should we Roth convert? Should we just go up to the top of the bracket and leave it at that? Well, that's what I'm going to challenge you today and say there's way more than that. And also in today's video, we're going to give you some really good points to understand when you do look to do those Roth conversions to make sure that you don't miss it, but also make sure you're using the right tax planning type of software and doing the right type of analysis, running the right type of reports, running the right type of calculations to ensure you're maximizing that decision. Because when you do a Roth conversion and you do it successfully, that can lead to hundreds of thousands of dollars in tax savings over your retirement.
Joe knows taxes.
Joe knows the market.
Joe knows Social Security.
Joe knows income planning.
Joe knows pickleball? No.
This is Joe Knows Retirement.
So how do we determine how much to Roth convert? Let's take a step back and determine who should do a Roth conversion. Now again, this is general advice, this is not specific advice, but let's just give you a rule of thumb that we typically go off of. And ultimately what this rule of thumb says is that the more you have saved, the more our Roth conversions start to make sense. And so here's the thought process. If you have $250,000 or less saved up, Roth conversions may not make sense for you or may not make as much sense for you. And the reason why is because you don't have as much taxable burden than maybe others do. And if you have a $250,000 IRA, when you turn 73, which is required minimum distribution age, or age 75 if you were born in 1960 or after, that's when the government forces you to take out about 4% of that tax-deferred investment. So if you only have $250,000, you're only going to be required to take out $10,000. Well, that may keep you in the standard deduction. That may, if you have a pension, maybe force you into the lower tax brackets, maybe start to force some Social Security to be taxable, but it's probably not going to lead to any significant tax burdens for you. Now, if you have $250,000 to $1 million, for those types of people, we would suggest it starts to make sense to look at these Roth conversions. And for this crowd, typically small amounts over time can start to make sense, and just making sure you're maximizing those specific brackets over time so that you don't end up forcing Social Security to be fully taxable as a consideration typically for that crowd. Now, if you have $1 million or more, you probably guessed it, it's almost a non-negotiable to do a Roth conversion in my mind. Now, there's still some type of people in that crowd that don't need to do Roth conversions, but it's very rare that we see that, especially with the people that we work with. So those that we work with, 1 million or more, we typically see that Roth conversions start to make more sense. And the reason why is because of the Social Security being fully taxable, I just mentioned, but also now you're looking at Medicare premiums potentially costing more. You're looking at capital gains you're phasing in and out of. You're looking at other credits and deductions. You're looking at AMT, net investment income tax as well. There's all these considerations that play a part the higher income is. And so if you have $1 million, let's say you're 60, well, by the time you're 75, that may be worth, $2 million. And if you have $2 million at that point, now your RMD, 4% of that is going to be $80,000 on top of your Social Security. Let's call it, $70,000 with a married couple. Now you're at $150,000 of income, and now you maybe have a $50,000 pension on top of it. You're at $200,000 in blink of an eye. And you've probably been told all your life that you'll be in a lower tax bracket in retirement, but actually what you found is that you're probably actually in the same tax bracket or potentially higher. But also, now you're having to worry about other taxes in retirement that you didn't have to worry about before. Social Security, Medicare, AMT, all these other taxes that we've talked about. And so, as you can see, that's who probably should do a Roth conversion, to kind of give you a ballpark there. And also those who have more saved and tax deferred, obviously. If you have a pension, we do a lot of videos on pensions. We have a lot of clients with pensions. That's when it starts to even make more sense to do Roth conversions, because your income's always starting higher, and all of those RMDs on top of it are just going to be more and more and more. Versus if you have a Roth, Roth conversion, you get to lower that amount of investments that you're having to withdraw, which lowers your income, lowers your Medicare impact, Social Security impact, so on and so on. So now let's talk about the theme of this video, is how do we determine how much? Joe, we already know we need to be doing this. How much should we be doing? What's the sweet spot? Should we just do 100,000? Should we just guess and hope for the best? No, I don't recommend that ever. When we have people who come to us and say, and I ask them, what's your current plan with Roth conversions? I don't know. We just decided 100,000 last year because we guessed. Oh, did you understand that that puts you $1,000 over the Medicare tier, and now you had to pay an extra $1,000 for Medicare? But if you were $1,000 less in income, you wouldn't have had to pay that extra $1,000. So again, just small things like that can make a huge difference in the planning over time. So we want to be extremely strategic here and making sure we're making the right decision. And you can do this on your own. Let me make that very clear. I will tell you though, it's going to be very hard to do an optimal Roth conversion without the right software and tools to do so. Our team would never make a blind decision on a Roth conversion and tell someone, oh, just go up to that tax bracket. That's not how it worked with people who are in or near retirement. There's other considerations in place. So I would highly suggest you work with a team if you really are trying to optimize this, because they're going to have the software, they're going to have the tools, they've done this hundreds of times, they're going to be able to help you here. And also understand not all advisors do tax planning, so if you're currently working with an advisor and they don't know how to help you determine how to do a Roth conversion, I would probably leave that advisor and find a team that can do that, because you're probably paying some good fees to not get the type of planning that you're needing at this stage in your life, right? Specialist versus generalist, we've done another video on that concept as well, to make sure that people are getting the right type of help there. So with that being said, let's first start talking about some of the considerations of Roth conversion. So whenever we think of a Roth conversion, we always want to make sure we don't pay more in taxes now than we would in the future. So what we ultimately need to consider for your situation is, what is your tax rate going to be today, and what do you expect it to be in the future? Now, we don't know what your tax rate is going to be in the future because the taxes are written in pencil. I talk about that in my book, I Hate Taxes. But we want to make sure we're making an educated and informed guess here of what we think is going to be the case. And so as we know right now, tax rates are among the lowest rates we've seen historically, and they're going to go up here in 2 years. So we do know that tax rates are probably going to go up over the course of our retirement. They could be lower, but most people expect them to be higher, considering the debt we're currently in, considering that they're going to need revenue to cover some of these expenses. So that's the one consideration there. The other consideration is what is your income going to be in retirement, right? Because some people will tell you that you'll have a lower income in retirement, but as I shared earlier, that may not be the case with the people we work with. Their income may be the same or higher. And so if you expect your income to be the same or higher, and you expect tax rates to be higher, well, Roth conversions are going to make sense. So that's, the determination there. And so what we have to look at then is, when we decide how much to Roth convert now, is we don't want to force our income so high that we're going to end up paying more tax rate now than we would in the future. And so that's how we are looking to make these decisions. And then we're not only looking at federal tax brackets, we're looking at everything coming together. So I want to pull up a chart here to give you an idea of what this could look like in retirement. So we're showing a scenario here. This is someone without a pension. So if they had a pension, they would start further on this line here. But this is showing that little area between 0 to 20,000 where there is no colors. That's called the standard deduction, and that's where taxes are non-existent for income up until that point. So about almost $20,000, your Social Security will be tax-free, and you will not have to pay any federal taxes. And so basically how this chart works is, I'm showing here that based on your income, if it starts at 0 and now you take out, let's call it $40,000 from your investments, that's going to count as $40,000 of income, and that's going to put you at $40,000 on this chart here. And if you look to the left, the vertical line there, that's going to say you're going to be paying just over 20% in taxes on that next $1,000. And so if you want to take out an extra $1,000, you're only going to get to keep about $800 because you're paying that 20% tax. And these are based on tax rates here today. And so you're probably wondering, what's this blue? What's this purple? Well, the blue is going to be the taxes on ordinary income. That's going to be federal taxes. And as you can see there, it starts at 10% for a little bit. Then it goes to 12%. Then it goes to 22%. That's just our federal tax brackets, as you all know. And then you see the purple. The purple is going to be the Social Security taxation. So this is something that a lot of people are maybe confused about, because in the old days, 1985 and before, Social Security used to be tax-free to those people. But in 1985, they changed the rules. Social Security was in trouble, and as it is today. And so now it can be up to 85% taxable, meaning that if you fall in the $40,000 range here, like I use that as an example, you're not going to see all of your Social Security fully taxable. You're only going to see that portion in purple, that's $40,000 and below that line, that's going to be taxable. So with a lot of the clients we work with, we're trying to help them pay less in Social Security tax. Because if they find themselves with $80,000 that they're having to take out, let's say they have $2 million and they have to take out an $80,000 RMD, well, now they force Social Security to be fully taxable when they could have avoided that. They could have done some Roth conversions now, and maybe they were able to get their RMD down in the future to $40,000 or $20,000, and now they're going to pay very little amount of taxes in retirement. A very little amount of Social Security is going to be taxable, meaning more of that Social Security benefit is going to be in their pocket, is a consideration that you want to look at. And so, really where the sweet spot here is there's two places that we really want to look at trying to put ourselves in the future. And so we kind of have to back into the Roth conversions amount of how much we want to Roth convert now really dictates of where we're going to be at in the future. And so when we run these analysis for our clients, we're looking at where we're going to be in the future as well as what it will be today. And so in this scenario, you see that where it's a 40% increase in between 60 and 80,000. That's called the Social Security tax torpedo. And that's where you start to force Social Security to be fully taxable. So let's use this as an example. Let's say you had $60,000. Let's say it's about $65,000. It looks like that chart goes to about 75, that little torpedo. And so for $10,000 in this scenario, you would have to pay a 40% tax rate if you took out $10,000. So let's say your income was let's say your pension puts you at 65,000, and then you said, I want an extra 10,000 to go on a nice trip. And well, Uncle Sam says, that's great, but you can only keep 6,000 because I need my 40% in that scenario, because of Social Security now starts to become taxable, and you're also starting to force yourself into the 22% bracket versus the 12% bracket. Now, in that scenario, we would not want our client to sit there moving forward, right? We'd either want them on the other side of the torpedo so we can avoid that 40% tax rate, so we can save some of our Social Security dollars from being fully taxable, and so that and save ourselves in the 12% versus 22%. So those are considerations that we'd want to look at. So we either want to find ourselves below that big torpedo, and for some people that torpedo can look a lot worse. This is just an example to show you how it looks. And then we'd also either want it to look to be before the $20,000 standard deduction limit, right? And the way the standard deduction works is that if your income is under that amount, you don't pay any taxes. Standard deduction says the amount of money up to this point is tax-free. And so also, there's something called provisional income for Social Security. And if you can keep your income below that provisional income limit, then you could also have Social Security tax-free as well. Or if you have some of that Social Security that's taxable through that provisional income calculation, because those levels are pretty low. So most people have some Social Security that counts to be taxable. So in this scenario, some of that could count towards the standard deduction, but you still may be able to take out $20,000 from your investments, even though the standard deduction may be closer to $30,000 for a couple. You can still take out $20,000 tax-free and still have your Social Security. The Social Security amount that should be taxable still be in the remainder of that standard deduction, so you don't pay any taxes. So this is almost a very simple type of consideration that we look at. I'm going to show you another chart here that starts to get more complex. That is typically more of the case with our clients that we work with. But I just wanted to give you a really good understanding of how all this stuff plays together, but also to give you an understanding, like, it's pretty complex. And again, you need to know how this all changes, because this chart here I'm showing you does not apply to everyone. It depends on what your income is. It depends on what your investments are. It depends on what type of account you have, of how all of this plays together. So let me talk through another chart here. And in this chart, you're going to see a little bit more color here. And this is where, when we're dealing with clients with a higher net worth, these are the problems we're typically running into. And there's many more problems other than this, but these are just some of the common ones. And so again, you can see your purple, you can see your blue here, but we're also adding in capital gains taxes, which is the red. So capital gains taxes are going to be on non-qualified accounts. So if you don't have any non-qualified accounts or brokerage accounts or joint accounts or individual accounts or trust accounts, you don't have to worry about this one. But this is where if you sell off those capital gains or you have dividends from these capital gains type investments, then you're going to have to pay either a 15% tax or a 20% tax or a 0% tax, which I'm going to talk through how that works. And then you see those dotted lines. So there's 3 of them on this chart. Well, those are the Medicare tiers. So as you know, with the Medicare tiers, the higher your income is, the more you'll have to pay for Medicare. Now, you don't get better coverage, but you have to pay more. I don't think it's fair, but that's how the rules work. And so we're going to talk about how to plan around those here as well. And then that blue, the brown, it's a little subtle here. It can be a much more intense depending on the level of capital gains you have, but it's something called the net investment income tax that has to deal with those with a higher income on any extra capital gains above a certain point. And so it can be an additional 3.8% tax on top of that 15 or 20% capital gains rate that you're now responsible for if your income hits a certain point. So for some of our clients, we may be able to avoid that by keeping our income to a certain point ongoing and not having to worry about that. And then there's something else called AMT that you're not seeing on this chart specifically, and that's something that will be more common in 2026 with the tax rule changes. Right now it may not be for everyone. We do see it apply for many clients that we work with, but that's something that most people will want to consider as a plan changes here, tax rules change in 2 years. So again, with this chart, let's just start from the beginning here. As you can see, that amount at the beginning there, that $20,000 amount as an example is tax-free. That's the standard deduction. So if we only take out up to that amount, or we only have income up to that, you're good. You don't have to worry about paying federal taxes for that year. And then as we go up, now we start to force Social Security to be taxable. Now we start to force ourselves into higher brackets. And in this scenario, we're assuming that these are the tax rates in 2026. So you got 10, 15, you got 25, and you got 28%. And then you've got your Social Security tax that we just walked through, and then you've got capital gains. So the reason why you see that red pop up there in that spot is because capital gains are 0% up to a certain point. So I believe for this year it's about $90,000. That if you have capital gain, if your income is $50,000 as an example, and you sell off $10,000 of capital gains, well, your income's only $60,000. It's under that $90,000. You don't pay any tax on that capital gain. You're in the 0% capital gains bracket. But where that red is, that shows that if you bump your income beyond that $90,000 limit, now you start to force your capital gains into a 15% bracket there. And so in that scenario, that 50,000 plus a standard deduction, now you're going to find yourself in that position. And you'll see that torpedo I talked about just got a little more intense, because not only you're forcing capital gains now to be at 15% from crossing that income threshold, you're now starting to force Social Security to be fully taxable. We talked about that. Remember that 40% rate last time? Well, now it's going to end up being a 50% rate because of the capital gains 15% to add it on that particular income. And you're probably wondering, how does all this work? Well, if you didn't increase your income, none of that would have been a consideration. But now that you did, now you're forcing higher tax brackets, higher capital gains, higher Social Security. And then if we go even a little further down the torpedo and we go to that $100,000 mark, now we're having to pay another $937 a year in Medicare premiums. That's per spouse too. So if you're married, that can be even more significant for you. And then you could see you could hit another one at 150, another one at 200,000, and you could be paying a lot more for Medicare premiums, for Medicare and healthcare costs over time in retirement if we're not planning for this. And so the brown there is net investment income tax. Again, that would be something that we hit. And then we could also hit the 28% bracket moving forward. So I bring all of this up to bring us home to the fact of how do we determine how much to Roth convert? Well, again, we have to factor all this in of what does this look like for you now and what is this going to look like for you in the future, as I mentioned. But as you can see, for most people, they're going to find themselves in a 24% or higher bracket in the future almost right away under this example. I mean, they're not even $50,000 in and they're already close to a 28% rate because of the Social Security taxation. So here's my point I'm trying to make to you. It probably is going to make sense to go all the way up to the 24% for most people if they've been diligent savers, if they find themselves going to be in that position that you see here on this chart. If you think you're going to be in that standard deduction area moving forward, I probably wouldn't recommend you do Roth conversions, or if you do just do very small amounts. But for many of our clients, we're looking at going up to the 24% if the scenario looks like this. Now, that's not for everyone because you have to worry about those Medicare premiums. So the consideration we have is if we want to do big Roth conversions now and we are 63 or older, we're going to have to pay more in Medicare premiums. Well, that may be a smart thing, but it may not be. And so it may not be because, hey, later on, it may not be a big deal. But if you're going to expect yourself always to have to deal with these Medicare premiums moving forward, the consideration we have is, do we want to pay more in Medicare premiums for maybe 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 years? Or do we want to pay more in Medicare premiums for the rest of our life? Because if we take care of them now, we may not have to take care of them in the future. And so you have to just run the numbers of how that plays out would be a consideration of how to determine how much to Roth convert there. And if you are under, let's call it 63 or under 62, let's say you're 60 years old, well, you don't have to worry about Medicare premiums. You don't have to worry about Social Security tax. Those could be reasons for you to do more Roth conversions during those times. Or maybe it's a reason for you to defer Social Security till 70 so that you have more room to do Roth conversions without that added Social Security income, and you don't have to worry about that Social Security tax. And then maybe in the future when you do take Social Security, one, you'll have a higher amount from deferring it, but also it could be tax-free to you as well, because your income may at that time be lower because you've been able to do all these Roth conversions and all these other tax planning strategies to lower your income. And so again, this is not a recommendation to take Social Security at 70, because if you pass away at 70, that was the worst decision you could have made. So it depends on other factors, but I'm just trying to give you some planning ideas and different things to think through as you make this decision. So to give you an idea, this is what we look at. But again, to really emphasize what we look for is we try to make sure that we choose the right amount to Roth convert based on the tax rate that it will cost us to do it in that year based on all these considerations. And then we compare that to what it will be in the future. And then we have some other softwares and other calculators that we use to ensure that, hey, if we do this Roth conversion, will our net worth be higher or lower in the future? If we do this, can we expect and estimate that the total taxes paid will be more or less in the future? And so we look at more specific things just like that versus just guessing and trying to hope that it's going to be okay. And so again, I highly recommend you get help on tax planning and Roth conversion strategies that are this advanced. And so if you would like to seek our help on this type of planning, and if this is the type of planning you're looking for and you want to work with a team like ours, then there is a link in the description below that you can schedule a time with our team. And we'll start with a 15-minute call and just get to know you and see if we can help. And if so, we'll schedule another session to explore further and look to make a decision if this is something that we want to partner with and work together with moving forward. And so that is an opportunity for you, and we hope you enjoy these videos. Make sure you like and subscribe to these videos so we can help more people out there looking for this type of help. We know that this is more advanced type planning that is not talked about everywhere, and for that Midwestern millionaire, that person who has been a diligent saver, hardworking, frugal, this channel is for them, and we want to make sure that we can help those types of people. So with that being said, enjoy the rest of your day.